Shavua Tov, Miriam.
Shavua Tov. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. Had the children over.
Very nice.
Yes. I'm recovering. I'm coming to Daf Yomi to recover and be thankful.
That's a good way to be thankful.
Yeah. There are plenty of people that didn't live long enough to see grandchildren.
That is 100% true.
But I was zoche this.
How many do you have?
8.
Wow. Very
Bli Ayin
nice. Very
Thank you.
nice.
3 daughters, 8 grandchildren.
Okay. That works. I'm going to go get my bottle of water since he's not here yet.
Shavua Tov, Hanan.
Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Hanan.
Shavua Tov, Eli.
Shavua Tov, everyone. Sorry.
There we go. There we go. We're waiting for the master of ceremonies here.
I'm sorry, I'm here. So Shavua Tov, you guys can hear me okay?
We're good. Yeah.
We have a full house, and we have some special guest stars here. Nava, who's always joins us, and Rabba Claudia, and my mother-in-law Judy, is hosting. So there might be some background noise. We'll shush them if we need to. But today's hopefully a relatively straightforward daf, but very exciting. So it's daf Tet Vav, and I think we'll start at the Mishnah if that's okay.
Yeah. Yep. That's what we got up to.
Yep.
The previous was quite involved, so it'll be a whole new thing. So we got from the Mishnah. The second parak of Masechet Tanit, the topic I would say overall in the first parak, which we're going to continue, was about all the fast days that we do, primarily in this Masechet at least so far, because of rain, right? There's an absence of rain. A certain time has come when we expect it to rain, and the rain hasn't come. So the response is to fast and to pray and to seek rain. Says our Mishnah, and again, a lot of this is going to be a little bit repetitious from what we've already said in the Gemara, so hopefully you'll be familiar. Seder Taniot Ketzad. What is the order of the fast? Meaning, what are the mechanics? How do we actually arrange and perform these fast days? Says the Mishnah, Motziin et hateva l'rechova sha'ir. You take the ark, you take the aron out of the Beit HaKnesset, the thing with the Sefer Torah, and bring it out from private into the middle of the square of the city. So you make this a very public event. And notnin Ephraim makle al gabi hateva. You take Ephraim makle, what's it called? Ashes. Thank you, ashes, and put it on top of the aron. The Gemara is going to discuss all these details, of course, but these are ashes that you actually would, burn something and have ashes from. There's a Tosfot who says in Amabed, I think, that they were human ashes, and there are many Achronim who are very angry about that. Tosfot would say it's probably a mistake, and they try to figure out where these human ashes would have come from, like meaning you're going to dig up bones and burn them. And Rashi, Tosfot says because these commemorate Akedat Yitzchak, and so you want it to be human, which again doesn't add up a lot because there was no human burnt on Akedat Yitzchak. But either way, it's definitely ashes from something that's burnt, not dust. And you put that on top of the aron, and you also put those ashes Berosh HaNasi, on the head of the president, the head of the community, or Berosh Av Beitin, the head of the leader of the Beitin, and Kol Echad V'Echad Noten Berosho. And each individual puts those ashes on their own head. So everyone is in the right mood, I guess, of sadness. And Hazaken Shebahem, the oldest one among them, the elder, Omer Lifnehem Divrei Kivushim, starts speaking, gives words of Kivushim literally means depressing, is really the word, meaning things that are sad, that are painful, that arouse compassion. And one of the things they would say is, for example, Achenu, our brothers and sisters, Lo nemar b'anshe Ninveh. When you look to Yom Kippur, of course, when we read Ninveh, right, we read the story of Yonah, it doesn't say by the people of Ninveh, Vayar Elohim et sakam v'tanitam, that God saw their mourning clothing, their fasting. Ella, it says, Vayar Elohim et masehim. God saw their actions. Ki shavu midarkem hara'ah. They had come back from their evil way, meaning that God looks at your actions, not your behavior, not the performative part of it. Ubi Kabbalah Omer, and in the Kabbalah, it's Kabbalah Nava?
No, mystics.
So not the mystics. Kabbalah means in the tradition we have from the Nevi'im, right? We always use Kabbalah to refer to Divrei Nevi'im, like in Tefillah and Rosh Hashanah, we say Kabbalahu Omer is usually referenced to psukim from the Nevi'im. In the prophets, it says Omer, and this is in Yoel. Yoel is a very short prophecy about famine, about when the grasshoppers came, right, and ate all the food. And there it says that the Navi tells the people, V'kar'u levavchem v'al bigdechem, tear your hearts and not your clothing. And again, focusing on the action that needs to change from tshuva, not the performative part of it. Just as a side point, Rashi here and many are very bothered by what the word Kabbalah means in this context. Like Kabbalah, which implies a secondary level, right, not something direct, is the words of the Navi. So Rashi here, and again, it's not consistent. I'll just be very clear about that. Says that Kabbalah is a reference to when the Navi is directing you to do something. So when there's like a commandment, when the Navi says, for example, in this case, tear your hearts and not your action, that's words that we accept basically. We're heard from a Navi and we follow it because it's tradition from Moshe or from whatever the power the Navi has is. When we just quote a pasuk, like in Yonah, it doesn't really just describes an event that happened, you don't use the word Kabbalah. Again, it's not really internally consistent, but that's what Rashi says here. So anyways, these are the kind of psukim that this Zaken will quote for the people to encourage them to do tshuva. And then amdu b'tfilah, right? Then it comes time to get up and actually do the prayer. So here's how you do it. Maridin lifnei teva, you place before the Aron as the leader of the community, someone who is Zaken, who's old, viragil, and they're used to prayer. They know what they're saying. You don't want someone to get up there and to, mess up with the words or with the tune. And what the Gemara will say later, they have to have a good voice, right? Which excludes a lot of people. And someone who the tefillah will not be a distraction, right? You want the people to be able to pray. The yeshlo banim, someone who has children, and we're going to see later in the Gemara all of this and expands on it. The yeshlo banim is that person, has all of the pain and the knowledge of someone who's dependent on them. It probably means any dependence, right? So they have children who are dependent on them, and they understand the tsar and the difficulty of worrying about someone else's sustenance. But their house is empty. Now, again, not so clear what that means. The Gemara will have two different explanations, but one is that their house is empty, meaning they're impoverished, they're poor. So they don't have any food in their house, and so when they're actually praying for rain, they're praying from personal need as well as communal need. Says the Mishnah, libam shalem b'tfilah, libo shalem b'tfilah, so that their heart should be complete in the tefillah, that they really personally have a need for this as much as a communal need. So that's the chazan, that's the what do we call it? Bal tefillah, thank you. And the tefillah that they say on this fast day is a tefillah of 24 brachot. Usually we say Shmona Esrei, 18 brachot. And on a fast day, as we've already referenced earlier in the previous parak, we add 6 extra tefillot. Okay?
Isn't it for the last 7 ones though?
That's the first question the Gemara is going to ask at the end of today. So we'll get there. We'll have a lot of those questions about when this applies, right? Because again, there was a series, and we'll go through this too, don't worry, we've done already. There's a series of 3 fast days, then another 3 fast days, then 7 fast days, plus an initial set, right? So we'll see which one this describes. So there's 18 Yudchet Shebechol Yom. So 18 brachot of every day, the regular Shemana Esrei, which might be 19, right? But 18 at least in the Mishnaic version. Umosif Alehem Od Shesh. You would add 6 brachot for a fast day. So 6 complete brachot. What are these 6 brachot that you would add? Eloheim. These are the brachot. Zichronot. Now, before, let me try to clarify this. The place where you add these brachot is in the middle of Shemona Esrei. The 8th bracha, I think, Shemona Esrei is Ga'al Yisrael, right? We say, Baruch Atah Hashem Ga'al Yisrael, and God should save us. Now, Rashi understands, we'll say later in the Gemara, that's not referring to God should save Israel from their exile. It's referring to Ga'al Yisrael, that God should save us from our pain, from unfortunate events. God should redeem us from pain, from famine, from things like that. So after the bracha of Ga'al Yisrael, you add in these 6 brachot. Okay, so it's in between that, and the next bracha is Rafa'inu. So between Ga'al Yisrael and Rafa'inu, you add these 6 brachot. What are the 6 brachot that you add? Elohim. The first one is Zichronot and Shofrot. The first 2 are like we do on Rosh Hashanah. The entire Seder, the entire order of Zikaron, because Zikaron is asking God to remember our good deeds or remember that Akedah and to bring compassion on us. And the next one is shofarot, which is calling the shofar to remember Har Sinai, remember again our connection to God. So those are the first two. The third one is the parak of Tehillim of El Hashem b'tzarate li karati v'yaneni. David says, I called out to God when I was in pain, and God answered me. So we read that whole mizmar, not just that, those are the first words. The fourth one is the Shir Lamalot, Esa Inai al Harim, right, where you call out, I raise my eyes to the mountains and ask God for salvation. The fifth one is Mimamakim Karaticha Hashem, I call out to God from the depths. And the sixth one is Tfilah La'ani Ki Yatov, another parak of Tfilim, a prayer of the poor person, meaning the poor person in great need, who's wrapped up in prayer. So those are the six, okay, that you add. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Lo hayatzarech lomer zichronot v'shofrot. You should not say zichronot and shofrot, meaning you don't say those on a regular fast day. Those are set aside for Rosh Hashanah. Ella Omer tachtehem, you should add the following two tefillot. The two tefillot that you add instead, again, they get to the same six, are the first one is the tefillah of Shlomo HaMelech. Remember when Shlomo inaugurated the Beit HaMikdash, all the people came in and Shlomo got up and gave a beautiful prayer, which we read in the Haftorah on sometime in the high holidays. Sometime in Sukkot, we read the Haftarah. I forgot if it's the first day or anyway, sometime then. But we read this tefillah of Shlomo, which goes like this: Ra'av ki yeh ba'aretz, when there's a famine in the land, dever ki yeh, when there's pestilence, people will pray. They'll come to this house. Shlomo says, and our tefillot will go through this house to God. So you read that whole parak in Melachim, and you read Asher Hayad Hashem al Yirmiyahu Divrei Batzorot, the chapter of Yirmiyahu, of Jeremiah, which talks about the famines. That also. It's a whole chapter about praying about famine. So those are the six. The Omer Chotmehem, and now you have a special chotam, a special conclusion for each of these six brachot. Al Rishonah, now the Gemara is going to point out that the Rishonah means not the first one, it means the number zero, because there's seven, it's going to turn out to be seven special chotamot. So there's only six extra brachot. But the first one, which is Ka'al Yisrael, we add a special chotam, we add a special concluding sentence. Okay, so Rishonah is not the first; it's like pre number one. Al Rishonah Yomer. This is what you would say. And this is going to be familiar to everyone who reads Slichot. You would say Misha'ana et Avraham b'Har Moriah, the one who answered Avraham on Har HaMoriah when Avraham prayed in the time of the Akedah. Now again, it's very unsure among everyone exactly what Avraham prayed for, right? Because God had commanded Avraham to sacrifice his son. So Avram went along with it. So the question is, what was Avram asking for? Was he asking God not to sacrifice his son? Because he did it, right? So some would say Yitzchak prayed on Har Moriah, but that's a Rosh Hashanah discussion. Either way, but we quote this pasuk, of course, this statement all the time. The one who answered Avraham on Har Moriah, Hu ya'aneh etchem, God should answer you. Yishma b'kol tzakatchem, and should hear the sound of your cry. Hayom hazeh, on this day. Baruch atah Hashem Go'el Yisrael. Right. So that's the meaning you added that sentence in the regular bracha in Shmona Esrei. The next one, Shniya, which is really the first of the new ones, Al Shniyahu Omer, Misha'anat Avatenu al Yam Suf. God who answered our forefathers and mothers on Yam Suf, Hu Ya'aneh Etchem should answer you, V'yishma Kol Tzakatchem Hayom Hazeh, and hear the sound of your cry on this day. Baruch atah Hashem Zocher HaNishkachot. Blessed is God who remembers those who've forgotten. Of course, if you're going with the Tanna Kama, which is the way we're going, the first bracha that you add was Zichronot, right? So that's the closing is remembering the deeds and or sacrifices. Al Hashlishit, the third one, which again is really the second one. Hu Omer Mishanat Yoshua beGilgal. So those who are learning Sefer Yoshua know God answered Yoshua when they went around Yericho, right? When they were camped in Gilgal. And they fought the wars, and they ultimately fought against Yericho. God, who answered them in Gilgal, Hu Ya'aneh Etchem, should answer your prayers, V'yishma b'kol tzakatchem, and should hear the sound of your cry, Yom Hazeh, Baruch atah Hashem shomea tru'ah. Right, so that's the second one, which is the tru'ah. So you called out with the shofarot, and Yoshua, of course, and the people all put their trumpets and marched around the city of Jericho. Remember the story? You know the story? Good. So that's the second one. Al HaReviyit, again, which is really the third one. Hu Omer Mishanat Shmuel b'mitzveh. The one who answered Shmuel when Shmuel davened b'mitzveh when they wanted a king, right? And there was a lot of, I would say, disconcertion among Bnei Yisrael. because they were struggling with their identity. God answered Shmuel, Hu ya'aneh etchem yishma b'kol tzakatchem. God should answer you and hear your cry. Hayom hazeh baruch atah Hashem shomea tzaka. The one who hears the cry, and that, of course, is equivalent to this pasuk of El Hashem b'tzarati li karati v'yanini. I called out to God, and God answered me. So that's the shomea
Can I
tzaka.
just- can I just say, though, of course, last week, we had Shmuel criticize that he asked incorrectly, and God answered him anyway.
Correct.
So
But we still mention this all the time, right? So
Yeah, no,
clearly-
I know, but it's just like
Yes, there is, again, like many of these stories, exactly how it happened.
not straightforward.
I agree, 100%. Thank you, Claudia. Ala chamishit, for the fifth one, which again is the fourth added bracha, hu omer, mishanat Eliyahu b'har Carmel. One who answered Eliyahu, when Eliyahu prayed with the fight with the Nevi'ei Habal on Har Carmel, hu ya'aneh etchem yishma b'kol tzakatchem hayom hazeh, baruch atah Hashem shomea tefillah. Right, God should answer tefillah, and that is with the fourth one, which was Esa inai al harim, with my eyes to the mountains, which is where Eliyahu was on the mountain. Ala shishit, for the sixth addition, which is the fifth bracha, hu omer mishanat Yonah b'mei hadaga, one who answered Jonah when he was in the belly of the fish. Hu ya'aneh etchem yishma b'kol tzakatchem hayom hazeh, baruch atah Hashem honeh be'et sarah. God who answers us in our time of need, and of course that corresponds to the tefillah of Mimma Makim Karaticha Hashem. I called out to God from the depths, which were the words of Yonah, essentially paraphrased, who was out in the depths, in the belly of the ocean. And the final one, Al Shvi'it hu omer, Mishanat David vet Shlomo b'no b'Yerushalayim. God who answered David and Shlomo in Yerushalayim. Not 100% clear either what this is referring to exactly. David had many times in his life when he had to pray to God. The famous one, which Rashi quotes here, is when there was a famine. In the days of David, there was a big famine, and unfortunately, there was also a very bad ending to that story when he killed the children of son of Shaul, or Ishbosheth, right? That whole story. But either way, different time, right? But David had a famine and had to pray, and Shlomo, of course, had the very famous prayer, which I referenced earlier, when he brought the ark into the Beit HaMikdash, and he had this huge tefillah. So God who answered David and Shlomo in Yerushalayim,
Bless you.
Hu ya'aneh etchem yishma b'kol tzakatchem hayom hazeh, baruch atah Hashem hamerachim al haaretz. God who has compassion on the land, and Rashi says that also refers to David and Shlomo, who of course lived in Eretz Yisrael. So that's the reference there. So this is the whole sequence of the 6 extra tefillot and the 7 extra conclusions that we add on a fast day. Okay, that's the first part of the Mishnah. Continues the Mishnah now, last word on Tetvav Amud Aleph, Maaseh b'mei Rabbi Chalafta, Rabbi Chananya ben Tradion. There was a story in the days of Rabbi Chalafta and Rabbi Chananya ben Tradion. Rashi likes to point out over here, was in Tzipori and in a place called Sichni, up in the Galil. So there was a story during the days of those rabbis. So Avar Achad Lifnei Teva, there was one person, it's like if it's one of them or probably not, one of the Baal Tfilah went in front of the Teva and they're in front of them. The Gamar Bracha Kula, and they finished all of this bracha, below anu acharav amen. And this is Rashi's girsa here, just to be clear. The other Rishonim disagree. The Rambam disagrees very strongly. But Rashi has the girsa of lo anu acharav amen. They didn't answer amen, but what they did was taku hakohanim b'taku. They said the kohanim should blow the shofar. And so after each bracha, instead of saying amen, they would blow the shofar. And they said the following: Bisha'anat Avraham Avinu Bahara Moriah, which we just quoted on the first page. The one who answered Avraham and Hara Moriah, Hu Ya'aneh Etchem Yishma B'Kol Tzakatchem Hayom Hazeh, and then Hariyu B'nei Aaron Hariyu. Right. So first they did a Tkiyah, then they did a Tru'ah, and then they went to the next one. Bishanat Avotenu Al Yam Suf, Hu Ya'aneh Etchem Yishma B'Kol Tzakatchem Hayom Hazeh, and then they blew the shofar again. Right. So Rashi understands that the issue here was that they didn't say the word Amen. Ukesheba Davar Itzoch Chachamim. And when the rabbis heard about what happened, they said, Lo hayinu nohagim kein ela b'shar mizrachu b'har habayit. That was the practice in the temple. When you prayed in the temple, that you would not say Amen. Instead, you would say, Baruch Shem Kivon Malchuto L'olam Va'ed. And that's not the practice we should have outside of the temple, in Sichni or in Tzipori. So that's how Rashi understands it. The Rambam and many other Rishonim understand that the issue here was blowing the shofar, not saying Amen. That the fact that they take out the words that they didn't say Amen, and they say the point here was that they blew the shofar, and you don't blow the shofar on a fast day unless you're in the Har Habayit, in the Beit HaMikdash. But that's again a matter of a lot of debate. We don't, it's not our custom. Shalosh Taniot Rishonot. Now back to the Mishnah. Again, this is really all the Mishnayot of the Parak are gathered together. The first three Taniot, meaning which is when it just stops raining, right? So let's say it doesn't rain for a month into the rainy season. We had the times before. You decree three fasts: a Monday, a Thursday, and a Friday, and a Monday. A Monday, a Thursday, and a Monday. So in those fast days, things are not so bad yet. So the people who work in the Beit HaMikdash, remember the Kohanim were split up into groups. And so the Kohanim were split up into probably 24 groups, which was called a mishmar, right? So every again, not clear what happened the other weeks, maybe during the holidays, they didn't count, which the Gemara says in Tzvachim, but there's an extra week or two there. But the Kohanim, basically, you had your week of service, like jury duty, and within that, those are called Anshe Mishmar, the people of that week, of that Mishmar. And within the week, they would split the people up into days, right? Rashi here says 7 days. Elsewhere, Rashi says 6 days, and Shabbat they would all share. But they would split the people up, let's say, into 7 days. And so you would be Monday service, but you're back up every other day if you're the Kohen. So during your Monday service, you're ready to go, and you're back up all week in case they need extra, help any of the extra days. So says the Mishnah, during the fast days, the first fast days, which are not so strict, meaning it hasn't really been that long, not raining yet. So the Anshe Mishmar, the people who are on duty that week, and it's not their day, but it's not their day to work, mit'anin v'lo mashlimim. They fast, but they don't finish the fast. Meaning, fast part of the day, you fast till you're very weak, but you don't finish the day because you might be called on to work. And so you need to be available for service in the Beit HaMikdash. And Anshe Beit Av, those who it's their day to work, lo mit'anin klal, they don't fast at all because they got to be ready to work in Beit HaMikdash. They have to work. Shalosh Shniot, when you get to the middle three or second three fast days, then it's a little more chamor, it's a little more desperate. And so the Anshe Mishmar mit'anin u'mashlimim, those who are there for the week but are not on duty that day, they fast and finish the fast, meaning they fast all day. And Anshe Beit Av, those who are supposed to work that day, mit'anin v'lo mashlimim, they fast half the day, but they don't finish. And it's not literally half, but part of the day. Sheva Achronot, the last 7, when things get really desperate and we're fasting almost nonstop, right? The last 7, then Elu ve'elu mit'aninu mashlimim. Everyone fasts and finishes the fast, Divrei Rabbi Yoshua, because we really are desperate. Nechachamim omrim, it's one level less. Meaning Shalosh Taniot Rishonot, the first 3 fast days, Elu ve'elu lo yematanim klal. You're working in the Beit HaMikdash, you're on service, you don't fast. It's not for you, right? Because you got to be ready to work. Shalosh Shniot, the next 3 fast days, Anshe Mishmar mit'anim v'lo mashlimim. Those who are there for the week, fast but don't finish. And Anshe Beit HaMikdash klal, those who are on service that day don't fast at all. And Sheva Achronot, the last 7, it's much stricter. Anshe Mishmar mit'anim mashlimim. Those who are on service that day, that week, fast and finish the fast. Anshe Beit Av mit'anim v'lo mashlimim. Got it? They fast, but they don't finish. They don't finish because they're working that day. Period. Now, new topic. This is again how Rashi understands. We're at the second wide line on Amud Bet. Second wide line. The Anshe Mishmar. These are the people who are assigned to work that week in the Beit HaMikdash, but not assigned this day. Let's say it's Monday and you're assigned to work on Wednesday. So says the Mishnah, Mutarin l'shtot yain b'leilot. They can drink wine at night. Remember, you're not allowed to work in the Beit HaMikdash if you're drunk. That's famously a bad thing, right? You learn it from many places, but the Pasuk talks about it in the context of children of Aaron, right? Nadav and Avihu. So it says, not maybe that's what they did, right? But it says that, but you can drink wine at night, meaning there's not that much going on in the Beit HaMikdash at night. Most of the work was done during the day. There is work at night, but you're not on service that night. You're backup. So presumably, if they don't need you by the night, they're not going to need you, and you could drink and go to sleep drunk as much as you want. Next morning, you'll be feeling fine. Have a glass of wine with dinner. Avalo b'yamim, but not during the day because you've got to be ready to do avodah, which you can't do if you drink. The Anshe Beit Av, but if it's your day, if you're the Monday person, then lo bayom v'lo b'layla, you can't drink during the day or at night because you are going to be called on to work, and you're not allowed to work, of course, if you had alcohol. Continues the Mishnah. Anshe Mishmar v'Anshe Ma'amad. Now we introduced this new concept of people called Anshe Ma'amad, which we've had before, but we're going to have much more later in this Masechah. The Anshe Ma'amad literally mean the people of standing, the people on duty, which were people who were not necessarily Kohanim. They could be, but they were Kohanim, Leviim, or Yisraelim, who basically, it's a beautiful thing. The Gemara talks about later. We're going to talk about it, where they had a custom that there was an obligation, maybe, where people were assigned that week's duty. Like basically, they had to go to Minyan every day that week, right? Kind of thing. So when the tefillah, the prayer, essentially, the service for all of Bnei Yisrael was bringing the karbanot in the Beit HaMikdash, bringing the sacrifices. So there would be special people assigned who would go and pray and be present with the prayer, with the sacrifice, to basically represent all of Am Yisrael, all of the nation. And those were called the Anshe Ma'amad, and it was considered to be a very big respect, right? It would be something, it was a duty and a big important thing. So the people who are from the Mishmar, which are the Kohanim, and the Anshe Ma'amad, Asurin min l'saper min l'chabes. You're not allowed to go and get a haircut or wash your clothing during that week. The reason the Gemara is going to say later is because, well, it's two reasons. First of all, we're afraid, I can't work next week. I got to go on jury duty, essentially. I'll get my haircut then, right? And so we're afraid, same as you're not supposed to get a haircut on Chol HaMoed, right? Because we're afraid that everyone will delay until that time. And it's not kavod during that week to go and be getting haircuts. But also you'll show up dirty, right? You'll show up without your haircut because you didn't wash your clothing in 2 years. Because you figured I'm going to have my week to go take care of things. So therefore, we asked you from doing it that week. So hopefully you show up clean and shaved, right? So you're not allowed to get a haircut or wash. But on Thursday you can get a haircut. She adds haircut here because of Shabbat. So you can't do it on Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, but you can do it on Thursday. And Rashi explains that people generally would get their haircuts on Thursday because on Friday you're too busy to get your haircut, right? Or Shabbos, right? So on Thursday was the day to get your haircut.
I'm going Tuesday.
Oh boy. Well, it's okay. It's better than Friday. You're not smart that week. Kol HaKatuv. Now, again, these are a little bit non-sequiturs. Part of the reason it's a non-sequitur here is that these Mishnayot, again, are all jumped together. They are connected, but we would generally have stopped them, talked to, which is the way most breakup is. But for every reason, whenever they publish the Gemara, they put them all together, right? So anything that says in Megillat Ta'anit, which is the next level. So remember, we quoted this earlier, we've quoted many times, but there was a rabbinical text called Megillat Ta'anit, which was written sometime very early, around the time of the Mishnah. People can correct me here. Certainly parts of it were written early, at least according to the Chazal, maybe. And it was a list of dates that you're not allowed to fast, or you have to fast, right? So there were both, meaning there were happy days like Hanukkah, and sad days, which we'll talk about in a second. But they were basically days that you either could not fast, right? Which is I would say a one level of holiday, right? If it's a happy day, you're not supposed to have a fast. And days which you're not allowed to say a hesped, which you can't give a eulogy on a person who dies, which is a much, much more special day because, fasting is a public thing. And so there are days where you don't want to fast, but if there's really a great celebration like Hanukkah, you don't give a eulogy, and someone dies, they're not eulogized. They're mourned, but they're not eulogized, which obviously is a pretty significant level of not doing what you would normally do for someone who died. So any of the days, says the Mishnah, Kol HaKatuv Megillat Ta'anit, so I guess it was written before the Mishnah, any of the days that are written in Megillat Ta'anit, the lo l'mispeid, if it says not to give a hesped, not to eulogize, that's a very strict day. And not only are you not allowed to eulogize on that day, but you're not allowed to eulogize on the day before. Lefanav asur. Even the day before, like, and Hanukkah is a great example. It's a debate, actually, but let's say Hanukkah is an example. Hanukkah starts on Monday this year, Sunday night. According to this Mishnah, you would not be able to eulogize someone on Sunday, the day before. Well, here tonight counts as. She says it's because eulogy that you'll continue on to Hanukkah, that it will carry over.
Have the joy.
And you won't have the joy, correct. But lacharav mutar, but the day after would be okay. Because once the holiday is passed, the day after Hanukkah, let's say, don't do this at home, would be okay. And Rabbi Yossi says, no, the fanav ulacharav asur. That's asur the day before and the day after, because some of the specialness of the day sort of remains.
Isru Chag.
Sort of chag. The lo hitanot, but if it says in Megillat Ta'anit not to fast, that's a lower level of a holiday, and then it's only the day that's prohibited. But lefanav ulacharav mutar, the day before and the day after would be permitted to fast. And Rabbi Yossi says, I disagree. Again, lefanav asur, the day before would be prohibited, but la'acharav mutar, but the day after would be okay. So that's the Megillat Tanit. Again, the Gemara is going to expand on each segment of the Mishnah. So
And you can read
stay
Megillat
tuned.
Ta'anit on Sefaria.
And Claudia answered that you added that you can read Megillat Tanit on Sefaria. Again, there's a lot of discussion about the dates, but there's a lot of really cool stuff in Megillat Tanit, different, commemorations. It's mostly Second Temple because that's when it was written.
Hasmonean.
Hasmonean, and days that different people died or people who we wanted to died that were celebratory. Ein gozrin Tanit al tzibor b'tchila b'chamishi. Interestingly, if you're decreeing a fast, remember they usually fast on Monday, Thursday, and Monday and Thursday, but you never start on a Thursday. Why don't you start on a Thursday? Because if people fast on a Thursday,
They can't prepare for Shabbat.
good question, but not yet, because they're all going to go on Thursday afternoon. Everyone who's fasting knows you go to the supermarket on Thursday afternoon and you buy everything you see because you're starving, right? So it's a very big thing to shop when you're starving. Not a good thing to shop when you're starving. But you're going to buy food to break the fast on Thursday night, and you're going to buy food for Shabbat. And so there's going to be a run on the supermarket. And when there's a run on the supermarket, obviously the prices go up, there's inflation, and things are terrible. So you never want to increase demand going into the holiday season, right? So you wouldn't start a fast on Thursday because shlo lahafkia hasharim. So you don't jump up the rates, right? You don't increase the prices of everything. So you don't want to have a run in the supermarket. Ella shalosh taniyot harishonot, you should do sheni v'chamishi v'sheni. Start on Monday, because then by Thursday, it's not like people are going to be, the first fast is always the hardest, right? You get used to, you're not used to the concept of not eating. And the shalosh shniyot, but the second group of fasts can be chamishi, sheni v'chamishi. They can start on Thursday and be Thursday, Monday, Thursday. Rabbi Yossi says, no, I disagree. Just like you don't start the first series of fasts on a Thursday, kach lo hashniyot. You don't start the second ones below achronot, and also not the final ones. So that's a machlok. Continues the Mishnah. Ein gozrin tanit ala tzibor b'rosh chodashim. You should never be gozer a fast on the tzibor that starts on Rosh Chodesh, like this coming week. And you can't do Hanukkah and Purim. You shouldn't have a fast that coincides. It starts on Hanukkah and Purim. So it's a good question. So Nava's question, which is an excellent question, is if these days are written in Megillat Tanit, why does our Mishnah need to add them? So the Gemara does discuss that question. So TBD. And to be discussed. V'im hitchilu ein mafsikin. But if you start, you don't stop. So that if you started a series of fasts, and it was Monday, Thursday, and the next Monday was Rosh Chodesh, the Rashi makes it sound like it's only Rosh Chodesh, not necessarily Hanukkah and Purim, but that's not so clear. But certainly Rosh Chodesh, you would fast even on Rosh Chodesh as long as it was not the first in a series. Divrei Rabbi Gamliel. Amar Rabbi Meir, Afal Pisha Amar Rabbi Gamliel im mafsikin. Even though Rabbi Gamliel said you don't stop the series, meaning you don't interrupt. If the Thursday is Rosh Chodesh, you fast. Modehu hayash ein mashlimin. Rabbi Gamliel would admit that you don't finish the fast because it's not right to fast all day on Rosh Chodesh or maybe Hanukkah and Purim, but at least Rosh Chodesh. So you can start the fast because it's one of your series, but don't finish the fast. V'chein Tisha B'Av shechal liot b'erev Shabbat. And the same thing is true about Tisha B'Av that falls out on Erev Shabbat. Again, the Gemara will discuss this, but the implication is that you don't finish the fast, right? So now in our calendar, Tisha B'Av does not fall out on Erev Shabbat. It can only fall out on different days of the week, not lo badu, right? So not Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which are days of Pesach, right? Same thing as Tisha B'Av. But in their calendar, of course, it can fall out on any day of the week because they did not have these rules. And if Tisha B'Av falls out on a Friday, you fast, but you don't finish the fast because you're not supposed to go into Shabbat when you're completely starved.
But there are fasts that we do go into Shabbat.
Sarah B'Tevet. Yeah. So it's a debate, and we'll discuss some of that in the Gemara, not Sarah B'Tevet. But again, Tisha B'Av is presumably a little bit worse because you're fasting from the night before, so you're really
Right.
starving.
There's also a discussion about this in Rosh Hashanah where they talk about, they said, well, then let's just get rid of Hanukkah. And
Right.
people say, no, we can't get rid of Hanukkah because people like it too much.
Hanukkah is very popular, so we can't get rid of Hanukkah, as the Gemara says. The Gemara also earlier asked, what's the point of fasting if you don't finish the fast, right? The Gemara said, well, it's really just, to make to increase your tefillah. You don't accomplish, you don't quote unquote fulfill a fast, right? There's no half credit for fasts, but you're being mitzvah yourself, you're getting pain, and it leads to increased prayer. Continues the Gemara now. So we're finally up to the Gemara for the last few minutes. So the Mishnah said, Seder Taniot Kitzad, and this is a quote, right? How do you do the fast? Motzina Tateva. Ask the Gemara Miriam's question. About Filo B'Kamaita. Is that true even about the first 3 fasts that you bring down the ark? You asked it about the next thing, but is it true about this one? There are minhu. We learned in a Braita, now we quote a Braita. Shalosh Taniot Rishonot, Vishniyot, the first 3 Taniot, and the second 3, Nichnasim Beit HaKnesset, you go into the shul, right? Not in the public square with the outdoor tent, maybe another tent. You go into the community, into the Beit Knesset. You pray the way you do all year without adding the extra 6. The last 7, meaning when the famine is really severe and you're praying and time's going on without rain, then that's when you start doing all of the stuff we said in our Mishnah. You go out to the square, you put the dirt on top of the ark, or sorry, not the ashes on top of the ark, and the Rosh Nasi, or Rosh Beitin, on the head of the Nasi, and the head of the court. Everyone puts it on their own head. Rabbi Natan Omer, no, Rabbi Natan adds, it's not Afer. The word Afer, usually when you just say Aleph, Pei, Resh, it means Afar, it means dirt. So it says Rabbi Natan, Afer Miklahin Miviyin. No, it's ashes, right? It's dirt, something that's burned, which you burn bones and skin. Amr of Papa, Sister of Papa, to answer the question, now his favorite person, Kitznan Nami Matlitina Sheva Achronotznan. Our whole Mishnah is not referring to all of the fasts, it's referring to these very severe final 7 fasts where you did all of the stuff, including the extra 6 brachot in Shmona Esrei. Are we? Uberosh Nasi. Now continue the Gemara, the Mishnah, it said you put the dirt, the ashes, on the head of the Nasi. V'hadar tzani kol echad v'echad notel v'notem berosho. Right. First, it says you would. We're about to ask the question. It says, we'll see what the question is. But the Mishnah implies that you first put the ashes on the head of the greatest person, of the president, the Nasi, and then you place the ashes on the heads of every individual. Amy, is that the order you do it? But Tanya, we learn that says the Braita, Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says, B'gdula, matchilim min hagadol. B'gdula, when you're talking about something great. 5 minutes. B'gdula, when you do something that's great, that's good, thank you, Nava. Matchilim min hagadol, you should start from the greatest, right? So meaning when you're doing something that you're honoring people, the right thing to do is to honor the greatest person in the room or the greatest person in that assembly. Ubiklala, when you're doing something negative, matchilim min hakatan. You always lay the blame first on the junior person. Where do we know that? Because b'gdula, this is the Braita. When something is good, matchilim min hagadol, shenemar vayomer Moshe el Aaron ve'Elazar ve'itamar. Right? When Moshe, and this is not any specific thing, it's when Moshe tells over people. When Moshe tells of the how to act, right, in the Midbar, he goes first to Aaron, who's greatest, then to Elazar, then to Itamar, as children of Aaron. So that's the order, you go to the next greatest and the next greatest. Ubiklala, but when something is negative, when it's a curse, matchilim min hakatan, titanya, or tznan, bitchila nitkalal nachash. Initially, when you go back to the creation story, right, when the nachash ate or gave Chava to eat from the Eitz Hadat, first God curses the snake, and then we have the curse of Chava, and then you have the curse of Adam. So you see that generally, when things are negative, you're supposed to go to the junior person. So why in our Mishnah, when presumably putting these ashes on the head is showing, a level of desecration and bizayon of the person, because we're debasing ourselves, why would you start with the greatest and then go to the junior people? Why don't you start with the junior people and go to the greatest? Says the Gemara, because you're viewing it wrong. You're viewing the ashes as being a sort of a denigration, of putting that person down. But in fact, it's the opposite. This, in fact, the ashes are an honor to put them on someone. To Amri Lahu, you're saying to them, Aton chashivuta libayel rachami akuli. You are the ones who were desperate for. Meaning the ashes are meant to arouse sort of the feelings of sadness and need to pray. And so by putting the ashes on the greatest person, you're saying to the greatest person, we need you to pray for us. So it's essentially a measure of respect that they get to be the first ones to be crowned with the ashes. So it's not a denigration of them, it's a show of respect. Continued, 3 more lines. We said, again, the Girsa here is not so clear, but I'm going to take out these words. Kol notain, what's the Girsa? Kol echad ve'echad notain barosho. That's the words we have in the Mishnah. Every person puts it on themselves, on their own head. Meaning, first you would place it on the head of the Nasi and the Av Beit Din, of the senior people, and then each individual would grab from the bucket and take some ashes and put it on their own head. We'll see where in a second. Ask the Gemara why. Why don't Nasi v'Av Beit Din nami nishku inu v'nindchu b'rashayo? Why can't everyone put it on their own head? Why do you need to have this ceremony where you take ashes and place them on the head of the head of the congregation, right? Why do we have somebody else take it and put it on their head? Amar Rabbi Abadan Kesari, Eino doma mitpayesh me'atzmo lemitpayesh me'achim. The reason is that, again, the whole action here is meant to show that we are in pain, that we are desperate, that God is rejecting us, not answering our prayers, we are in need, and there's a much more, it's much more embarrassing to be embarrassed by someone else than to do it yourself. It's easy to put yourself down, right? And much harder to hear someone else put you down. And so even though, again, this is a whole performative thing, it's like tefillah, right? We know what's happening, but there certainly is a greater impact on someone when it's done by somebody else than when it's done on your own. So we want them, the great people in the congregation, to feel this embarrassment so that their prayers are stronger. Okay, that's the reason. And ask the Gemara, the last few lines, where do you put the ashes? Rabbi Yitzchak makom tefillin. You put it where someone would put their tefillin, which is right here in the middle of the forehead, above the forehead. Shenemar lasum la'avilei Tzion. This is a beautiful ending to the daf. This is the prophecy of Isaiah, where it's good that God will place the mourners of Zion, l'teit lahem pe'er tachat afar. God will place beauty instead of their ashes and their dust. And beauty, of course, always is a reference. The word pe'er is a reference to tefillin, we say, from the percha chavush elecha, that you're wearing your pe'er, is pasuk in Yecheskel. And so that's the reference to where the tefillin will ultimately replace the ashes that are placed on the heads of the mourners. So that should be the way it is. We will stop here. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
you.
Thank you. So what are we doing tomorrow?
8 o'clock, okay, Hanan? 8 p.m., Hanukkah?
It should be. It's unpredictable, but it should be okay.
So we're going to try 8 p.m. and if it doesn't work next week, we'll try a different time. 8
Okay,
p.m.
great.
first.
Thank you,
Thank you
Eli.
all. Shavua tov.
Shavua tov.
Tov.